Good evening. I'm Christina with Christy Lynn Outside, coming to you from my garden in Central Louisiana. Today I'm gonna do a little walkthrough of my garden, a little October update. I'm gonna try to do this in between woodwork that's happening in the shed right now. Boo is home and he is making a ton of noise, so if I cut out a lot, that's probably why. Let's get started. I'm gonna start at the far end of the bed, a little further away from the shed so that maybe the noise isn't so bad. This is my 2x4 bed at the far end of the garden with broccoli and one pitiful little Santa Fe Grand pepper that hasn't really produced much. It does have a lot of new growth and flowers on it, so I may get a few. I got a little pepper there. But these are Green Magic broccoli from Haas Tools. And a couple days ago, this will be the second time I've tried this, but in the middle here, I planted some seeds for spinach. So we're just waiting on that to germinate. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. It's still about 80 degrees here during the day. Low 80s, mid 80s. We had a little cool front last week, but that was it. It got a little hotter this week. This garden is just kind of a mixture of a bunch of things that went wild. I have some Thai basil here that's going to seed, and I have some marigold that just completely exploded and is spilling over the side here. Some really beautiful flowers, though. I hate to get rid of it. I did take some, these were all dried up. This was cow peas. I took the cow peas out, or most of them, and I took a bunch of serrano peppers that weren't doing so well out. If you see right here is one lone survivor serrano pepper that has a little bloom on it, but I don't think it's gonna produce anything. It's kind of choked out by the basil and the marigolds. Okay, I'm gonna be real with y'all. I'm gonna share some of the failures that I've had in the garden and some of my wins. Just part of being transparent and us learning together, because I'm not a professional, I'm just learning. So what I've learned about the marigolds in the garden are they're great for bringing in pollinators, they're great for keeping pests away, but in these small raised beds, they choke my plants out. Especially, I don't even know what variety of marigold I planted, but they are humongous bushes and they are shading out my plants. They shaded out my serrano peppers, they shaded out some of my tomatoes. So I think maybe next year they're not going in the beds. Flowers are not going in my vegetable beds. I will plant them along the edges of my beds maybe, or in containers around my beds, but I'm not going to put them in my raised beds next year. It's just not worth the hassle or the loss. So on the back of this bed, on the trellis, are some Christmas pole lima beans, if you can see some of them. I don't have a whole lot of them, so there'll probably just be just enough for maybe one meal or to save seed for next year when I can plant some more. I put too much in this bed. I put, like I said, the marigolds and the basil overtook part of this bed, and then I put cow peas and peppers, and then I decided to put Christmas pole lima beans in here, and it was just too much. I have one little naked fig that's got a few little leaves on the top. She didn't really do too well this year. She recovered. This is the one that recovered this year from 2 years of being dormant after the freeze a couple years ago. Didn't produce any fruit, but she did grow and she produced some leaves. And I think maybe I have her in a little bit too shady of a spot. I may have to scoot her back so that she gets a little more sun. In this 2x4 bed, I have the tops of the serrano peppers from my other bed that I accidentally broke off when I was putting in the arch trellis. And surprisingly, they have done much better. Also in this bed are zucchini replicante that are trellising up this arch trellis. There are lots of blooms, no fruit yet, but I did plant a little late, so we'll see if anything comes of it before the freeze. But I think I might end up getting a couple fruit at least. In my fourth 2x4 raised bed, I have cauliflower. This is Twister cauliflower from Haas Tools. Twister cauliflower. The back row I planted about 2 weeks or so before the front row, so we should have a little succession harvest with that. And also in the middle, I planted some seeds for spinach. This will be the second time I planted seeds for spinach because it was just too hot to germinate the first time around. Hopefully they'll germinate this time. In this 4x8 raised bed, I cleared out all of the cowpeas and took all of the stakes out, and now my asparagus is drooping. It's all turning brown, which is normal, and soon, once it dies all the way back, or when my strawberries get here, I will cut this back to the ground and let it overwinter and wait for asparagus sprouts in the spring. For now, I think that I'm gonna try to tie each row up in some string so it's not drooping over the walkway so much, and I maybe won't trip over it all as I walk by. So we'll see. We'll try to do that real quick. Okay, so tying up the asparagus actually will allow you to see the 6 defined rows of asparagus crowns I have in this bed. So whenever I cut these down, I'm going to have a lot of space in between, and that is where I'm going to plant my strawberries this month. Strawberry crowns should be here in a couple weeks. Please excuse my dog. He thinks that he's the biggest one out of the neighborhood, and he's really the smallest. And he is barking at the neighbor's dogs that are like 12 times bigger than he is. If this fence ever gives way, he's toast. Also, it showed me a lot of weeds that I need to take care of in this bed. So what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll pull all these weeds and clear the spots in between these asparagus crowns and ready this bed for my strawberries. So in the spring, the asparagus and the strawberries will both be producing and be harvested, or actually early summer. The asparagus will pop up in the spring, and I'll be able to harvest some spears in May, June, and maybe April, May. And then I'll let some of the smaller spears fern out to feed the crowns for the coming years. The asparagus will last for 10 to 15 years in this bed if we are here that long. And in June, hopefully, we'll have some strawberries. So before the asparagus ferns out too big and shades out all of the strawberry, we'll have some strawberries to harvest, and then everything will just gather energy from the sun for the rest of the summer and into the fall, and then I'll start the whole process over again. Along the back fence here are the blackberry bushes, and they are leggy, to say the least. They are kind of feeding up the two arbor trellises, arch trellises that I have in the back there, and then just kind of going wild here on the rest of the fence line. Again, I'm gonna be real with you and say that we really didn't get very many blackberries this year. Not because of the freeze like last year, but because I think I pruned the primicanes down a little too far. I cut everything down to about 2 feet tall, and I have a lot of new growth this year, but I just didn't have very many blackberries. So I think this year I'm gonna err on the side of caution, and when I'm pruning, I'm gonna prune the canes down to probably about 4 or 5 feet tall. That way the primicanes have room to send off some side shoots in the spring, and maybe that'll help me get more blackberries in the spring. This is my tomato and green bean bed, and it's lush. It's doing really well. I actually have a lot of blooms on my tomatoes. This is the first time I'm doing determinate variety of tomatoes. These are dwarf purple rain beefsteak tomatoes. None of these, or I only have 2 of these plants actually. I don't see any blooms coming on these yet, but hopefully we'll get some soon. Maybe a couple showing up right there. These are Martino's Roma tomatoes, and they are blooming a lot, so I'll hopefully get a lot from those. And then I have some Principe Borghese, and I actually have some fruit set on these, so I'm excited. Principe Borghese are like a larger cherry tomato type. These are all determinate tomatoes, so they won't get much taller than the stakes that they're pinned to. And I actually need to tie some of these up some more. One of my Principe Borghese tomatoes is dying back, and the culprit is this humongous marigold that has completely shaded it out and has not allowed it to get any sunlight. So that's why, like I said earlier, marigolds and flowers are not going in my vegetable gardens next year, only on the outside. The green beans in this bed are actually burgundy bush beans, and I have got lots of beans from this bed. Last week I harvested enough of the burgundy bush beans to make a meal, and we cooked it down with my grandson, And because the burgundy color of the green beans, well, LJ calls them purple beans, the burgundy color of the purple beans actually dissipated in the pot slowly, and the beans turned green. So now my peanut calls them magic beans because they change color. So in this bed, I'm going to tie up some of the tomatoes to the stakes because they're kind of drooping over a little bit, and then I will harvest some of the burgundy bush beans. So we got a nice little handful here. A couple more of these and we'll be able to make another pot of magic beans. In this bed, there's mostly collard greens and mustard greens. On the sides, you'll notice are bare. I have seeds planted for lettuce. This side didn't germinate at all, I don't think, so I'm gonna replant. Yeah, on this side there's a few lettuce seedlings that have germinated, but I'm gonna come in and drop some more seed. This bed is where I planted the garlic right here the other day in my last video, and I had said that I was going to leave the bare spot bare until my other garlic had fertilized and then fill in what I could from there. But I did decide, instead of leaving it bare the whole time until the end of November, that I'm gonna plant some radishes. So what I did was I planted 2 different kinds of radishes that'll probably take between 25 and 30 days to harvest. I planted some, I think, purple globe, or some purple. I'll put the names up. I planted some scarlet and some purple radishes in this spot. So when time comes for me to plant the other garlic, I'll just harvest the radishes and go in with the garlic. Now I'm gonna be real with you again and say that when I did the chop and drop in this garlic bed of the marigolds, I made a huge mistake. I just chopped up the whole plant and let it lay and then covered it with compost. I did not deadhead any of the flowers off of that marigold. So now I have a ton of marigold seedlings popping up in that bed. Not cool. This is my brassica bed that I have a mixture of cauliflower, broccoli, collards, and cabbage, I believe. All 4 seedlings that I got from Hoss Tools. And in the front here, I have some oregano, some rosemary, and some English thyme. In this bed, I have a mixture of kale and celery and carrots and lettuce. I have a few little baby carrots here, not a whole lot, but this is my first time doing carrots. I have one red Russian kale that survived me seeding, the only survivor. Some red Japanese Mizuna, and some Blue Ridge kale. And I'm not sure what kind. I think that was butter crunch lettuce that's popping up there on the side. And then a couple celery plants, little tiny things. So unfortunately, on this end, none of my carrots germinated. I spread a little bit more seed, and I'm gonna give it a little bit more time, but I think I'm just not here enough to keep the soil moist enough to allow them to germinate. So if this round of seeds doesn't germinate, then I'll just go in with probably some onions later this month or next month. This bed is my first round of lettuce and mizuna that I planted. This is tennis ball lettuce, red Japanese mustard mizuna, Yedicule lettuce, and I believe butter crunch, maybe? I can't remember. I'll put the name of it up there if I remember. I also have in the middle a couple Chinese cabbage. All of the others didn't really germinate. I do have a couple baby seedlings that have sprouted there, but I'll come back in with some more. I also seeded some more of the mustard greens in this bed. On the far end, I have a succession planting of a couple different kinds of lettuce, some Lunix lettuce that's like a dark reddish brown on the corner, some outrageous, and I just can't remember the last lettuce every time. This bed is my okra and peppers, shishito peppers. They're looking a little pitiful right now, and I'm not harvesting the okra anymore. I'm just gonna let them go to seed. I also had some butterfly pea that I have a ton of blooms that I need to harvest for tea. But also the butterfly peas are producing pods. I believe these pods are edible, although I'm not going to eat them. I'm just going to let them go to seed for planting next year. There's my two baby figs there and there. Still have a lot of fruit, and to my surprise, I have one more ripe fig, and this one has not split, so I'm gonna enjoy that. So part of an experiment that I'm doing to not plant flowers inside the raised beds is I mounded up some potting soil along the front of these 3 raised beds, and I planted calendula seeds, and they're actually doing really well. So I'll either do something similar to this with the marigolds next year, or I'll just put them in pots. Okay, last couple beds here. It's getting dark and it's about time to go cook dinner. This is my collards and cabbage bed that I went over earlier this week. They're doing really well. Okay, last bed. This last bed has 8 Blue Ridge kale, some mustards that have been seeded in the middle and on the end here, and I believe I've seeded some radishes as well. There's some little baby mustards coming up there, and then on the end I have that sweet alyssum and lavender that I just can't bear to tear out because it's just so pretty, and it lasted so much longer than I thought it would. And in the middle of all of that is my Seminole pumpkin that's coming out. There's some yellow leaves that I'm gonna trim off, but that Seminole pumpkin has trailed all along this side and all along this side and all the way down to the end there. And then I have one little baby pumpkin there. Doesn't really look like the Seminole pumpkins that I saw online though. It looks more like a squash. There's another one there. And that's it. That's my garden. So that's it. That's my garden. I had to come inside because it was just too dark and the mosquitoes were really getting to me. I hope Boo didn't bother you too much with his woodworking. He's actually making a trough feeder for us to take to the hunting camp and set up for deer hunting. And I am ready to make some dinner. I'm gonna make some beef stew tonight. I hope you enjoyed my video and hopefully maybe got something out of it. Maybe we learned a little something together. If you have any pointers for me, let me know. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe. Send me some love. In the meantime, have a great night and keep growing. So the one again, I'm gonna try to be real here. All right, let's try that again. You can see it there. Still have a lot of fruit on them. And Boo is making a lot of noise.